So welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar series. So I know we usually do host these series, which is a great access to information. And so we're very lucky to have a wonderful topic we're going to be discussing today and being joined by our presenters. So we do really appreciate you guys being able to participate and share your knowledge with us. So I will kick it over to our presenters. So go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Afternoon, I think. My goodness. I just want to share my slides here. Did I already do that?
You haven't shared them, no.
No.
But
Okay,
I'm loving seeing everyone's faces, though.
It's great. I'm Hsien Seow. Here we go. I'm Hsien Seow. I am from McMaster University. I am a researcher. I do healthcare research, trying to find efficient ways to support patients and families through various illness trajectories.
And I'm Dr. Samantha Winemaker. Sometimes people call me Dr. Sammy. Actually, not sometimes, always. I am a palliative care physician, and I work in people's homes, and I'm happy to be here today.
So what we wanted to share with you today is just a little bit about our story and hopefully some of the solutions and things that we've learned that can support people with ALS, patients, families, and providers. I see it says Sammy's slide here, but I know, I mean, we may not get into this, but we both have a connection, personal connections to this society, to this illness. So we're really glad to be able to have some, this time with you to share with you and hopefully answer some questions too at the end.
Yeah, so we'll just get right going, huh, Hsien?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I am a palliative care physician, and I care for people in their home. And I care for patients with all sorts of illnesses. And I've had quite a number of people with ALS that I've cared for in their home as well. And so, when I graduated over 20 years ago, I thought, oh, I'm going to be this awesome symptom management doctor. And yes, I had to learn how to manage people's symptoms. But once I started working, I realized that people were more looking for information. And sometimes they didn't even know what information they were looking for. They would often ask me to help them understand what's already happened in their illness journey and help them understand where things are at now. And many wanted to know what to expect in the future. And so I ended up spending way more time in people's homes talking about that type of information than anything else. And so many times people have said after we finish a visit, I wish I had known that earlier. Or why didn't anyone tell me that earlier? There seemed to always be a sense that these conversations could have been more beneficial if they happened earlier on, because I tend to meet people in the more advanced stage of an illness.
Yeah. And Sammy and I met because I am a healthcare researcher at McMaster. I have my own personal story, of my mother dying of cancer and just going through different and meeting different people all throughout my research. And they often say we never knew what to expect next. I mean, that's true for my story. We just didn't have a plan of what to plan for, what the next phase was, the next stage was. And having that information helps patients and families prepare to to take advantage of the time that they have and to live and make the choices they want and do different things with the time they have and make informed choices. So that story of what we never knew what to expect has been very consistent in my research for the past 15 years. And so Sammy and I, and hasn't changed much. So Sammy and I got together because we really wanted to change that story and put our heads together of what she was seeing clinically and what I've been doing my research to try to get the message out, what could we do to make the patient and family story different?
Some of you may be of the age where you remember Lucy and Ethel from I Love Lucy. And we show this because it's, first of all, how we often feel as healthcare providers, that we're just sort of always rushing and don't have the time to do the proper care that we wish we could spend more time with people. But this also represents the truffles that are going along the conveyor belt. And that is often the patient and family experience, is that they feel like once they get a serious illness diagnosis, that they're on some kind of conveyor belt, and often feel like they have lost a sense of control, and feel that they don't even recognize themselves in their own illness journey. So this little clip of this video, it can be used to think about how both healthcare providers and patients and families feel along an illness journey, which isn't ideal.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, and so, there's one thing about, scrambling at the end to make sure the truffles don't fall off the conveyor belt, but really, and that's the metaphor for people feeling, that they have to have these conversations or do all of this work at the 11th hour of an illness. Really, that's no time to get things, in order and invite these conversations. We really want to look upstream at what's happening along the entire illness journey that can help us understand how to improve every chapter of the illness story, not just zoom in the advanced stage and try to unscramble things.
So when we got together and we sort of we've been working together for almost 8 years, almost a decade, and in various forms. Of course, we had been working in our own little spheres, but we realized that there were some light bulb moments that we have that took us to the next level. So I'll put this image up, where we realized that we had a lot of information, intel. We were sitting on a gold mine of information. That's what this picture is supposed to represent. And one of these is Sammy and one of these is mine. You guys can guess which one and who's taking notes. No, I'm teasing. But we had a lot of conversations to try to figure out how we could use all these stories that we had through my research and all this patient stories Sammy had at the bedside. And we realized that there were these many patients felt in the dark. They felt unprepared, reactive, overwhelmed, frustrated. But there were glimpses of stories of people who were in the know, and they were more confident and more in control, in charge, and even more hopeful. And so really, what we set out to do and what we're going to tell you about is the secret of how to move from an in the dark to an in the know experience. I mean, it does go to that question of, I wish I had known that sooner. So we started there with all the things people said they wish they had known and trying to put that into some kind of action plan. And we knew that we couldn't change a diagnosis, but we could change the experience. You want me to keep going? The second light bulb is that we realized that I think, I switched it up there. Do you want to talk about this one? About the language and how this idea of a palliative approach was was a barrier to getting the kind of care that we wanted to provide. So we call a palliative approach something that puts an individual at the center of care, treats the whole person and family, helps people live the best that they can for as long as they can. But we know that when we say that, people think we're talking, they think we're immediately thinking about how to die well, and the death part, and demystifying death. But we're actually trying to help people live well. And a person-centered care is putting the person at the center, whole person care, and the best care possible. And really, these two things are overlap. Because a palliative approach is, at its heart, providing person-centered care. And I guess we really wanted to find a way to not have person-centered care be something that people get only at the end of life.
Mm-hmm. So, Hsien and I have taken all that we know, and we have, with many other people, tried to influence the healthcare system from behind the scenes, trying to convince them that this care that we provide, called palliative care or a palliative approach, is really just very person-centered care, as Hsien said, and puts the human back into the care equation on both sides. And so we've been trying and trying and trying to make the healthcare system feel less like a conveyor belt, less robotic, and more personalized. But it's very slow moving. Change is slow from a systems perspective. And so doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers are still very busy and feel very under-resourced with time and resources. And we just didn't feel that we were changing the system fast enough to explore what it would mean to absorb this kind of care into the daily practice of every doctor and nurse. And so we made a decision to say, okay, we are actually going to go right to the citizens and the public and people who are at the beginning of an illness journey. And we are going to take everything that we learned from being palliative care researchers and doctors, and we are going to take all of that important intelligence and the themes that we're seeing, and we're going to try to reconstruct it into something that is useful and helpful at the beginning of an illness journey, so that we're not scrambling in the more advanced stages, that there are things that patients and families can know about and can do every day of their illness journey that can seriously improve their experience and make them more in the know versus in the dark. So this is less about how to change the advanced stage of ALS and more about how we can change the beginning of an ALS journey, the experience of it, so that people have a better experience, even though we may not be able to change the ALS part of it as we would like to.
Yeah, I think it's really putting the human, the person and their family back at the center of the journey, for the entire journey, at the center of the experience. I think that's what we're trying to do. And so we created this it's a social movement. It's called the Waiting Room Revolution. It's a social movement designed for patients and families to transform the illness experience. It's started with a little website and our headshots there, but we created a podcast and we've been at it for a number of years, and we have a book. But we're going to tell you the heart of the Waiting Room Revolution. It is a revolution, meaning it needs everyone to be involved. So we're inviting you to join the revolution, patients, providers, because what we're offering is information and action that you take to make your experience better. And so the heart of it is these 7 keys for navigating a life-changing diagnosis. And we're going to talk about each of these 7 just very quickly to give you a bit of a taste. And in season 1 of our podcast, we talk about each of these in depth. But these 7 keys was our attempt to deconstruct what Sammy was saying. We deconstruct a palliative approach into everyday language that could be done right away. So we're going to start with the first one. Sammy, the first one is walk 2 roads. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So walk 2 roads. We realized that one of the keys to success to the people who had a more in the know illness experience was they were able to balance both hope and planning at the same time. That some people's natural tendency is only to think about hope, 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 positive, positive, fighting, 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 and they ignore some of the other realities of what's going on around them in the illness. And people who were more successful were able to walk both of those roads, that they can hope at the same time they can entertain the what ifs or the just in case scenarios. And that does not dishonor their hope. And so successful people in their illness journey were able to balance both. And so the first chapter of our book talks about walking 2 roads. And, really what this does is it helps invite the reality into the illness journey from the get-go And many people appreciate the reality because it helps ground people. And most people will tell us that they do not like living in limbo, that they want to know what's happening. And so gently sprinkling in the reality is the responsibility of the healthcare providers while we honor people's hope. So we're teaching patients and families how to walk two roads, and we're also inviting healthcare providers to invite reality into these discussions.
Yeah. The second key, and I think these 7 keys, you can think of them as an action plan uh, to get the best experience possible. But the second key is this thing called zooming out. And the idea that every illness has a beginning, middle, and late stage. And just knowing what are things that I should expect in each of those stages. They're well mapped out, including for ALS, what to expect, what to prepare for, and how do you know if you're transitioning from one to another chapter is sort of like the big picture roadmap of the illness. And many people want that information so that they can make the best choices for themselves in each of the stages. And so we teach patients how to ask for that, how to get that information, and we teach providers how to invite illness understanding and to help people understand their illness and what to prepare for and plan for. So we don't go back to that where we started, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to prepare for. I wish I had done that sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the zooming out as a skill that we're showing people how to do.
And the third key is know your style. So we appreciated that people who were in touch with their own coping mechanisms and their own way of being, their personality and their strong traits, let's just say, were able to use that knowledge to understand how they're going to walk this illness journey. That the illness journey is somewhat dictated by the illness itself, like ALS, but a lot of the experience of the illness journey is dictated by who we are as individual people. I know how I would be, for the most part, when I get a serious illness, because I know what I'm like on a day-to-day basis, but I also know what I'm like when I'm facing challenges. And so for better or worse, I know what my style is like, and same with my husband, and same with my mom, and same with my daughters. So this kind of information is very powerful because this is your style will influence how you experience your illness. And so what we're asking clinicians to do is not to avoid patients and families' individual styles. We're asking them to acknowledge the individual characters that come before them with a serious illness, because again, we can exploit and harness people's styles for better or worse to help them understand what they're experiencing and what to expect in terms of relationships and just how they're going to function during an illness.
Yeah. The fourth key that we realized was the difference between an in the dark and an in the know experience was people being able to customize their order and recognizing that the doctor knows the illness the best, but patients and families know themselves the best. And then the more that they could bring forward what was important to them, their values, and tell others about that, the more that they felt like themselves and not like a robot or a number or a body part. And that those values could inform their preferences, could inform their, advanced care planning discussions, could help them live the life that they wanted. And so there is an ability to customize your order, within reason, within the health system, and always balancing the decisions that you have against your own, terms of reference. And that's really about the idea of inviting personhood. So being able to do this is a way we coach patients and families of what to say of how to do that, and also clinicians on how to invite the person, their personhood, who they are into the equation, because we're not body parts, or we're humans, and we want to be seen as that and treated like that and to live fully. So
Mhm.
that's the skill, customize your order.
And then the fifth one is expect ripple effects. And so this key is about calling out that an illness affects people around the person who actually has the diagnosis. It's just a given that if a person lives with a family, in quotations, whoever that is, or next to close neighbors, or has close working relationships, their illness will have a ripple effect on all these people around them. And so we need to call that out at the beginning of a serious illness and just acknowledge that this is a team with this illness. It's the patient and it's the people around them. And so we cannot ignore the people around them. We are, go ahead, Hsien, making sure that the healthcare system invites and acknowledges the people in the shadows of the illness, so often the people who feel invisible, who are the person's inner circle, which we call their inner crew or their chosen family.
Yeah. The sixth key, we're almost there, is this skill about connecting the dots and recognizing that either the patient or their inner crew around them has to play some kind of navigating role to be the glue in all the different parts of the system. And it isn't just medical information that they're, putting together or connecting with home care and, this specialist and that and the family doctor. And, it's also the story of who the person is, how they are changing, or how the people around them are coping. All of those are critical to keeping the patient and family at the center of the story. So connecting the dots is just, we give tips on how to do that well in any system, and also share with clinicians how to invite partnership. This is really about partnering, because we often say that the healthcare provider team is joining, they're joining the patient and family team. Their patients and families do the 95% of the work when they leave the hospital. And so, the expertise they provide is to support them to live as fully at home or wherever they are as possible. And so there needs to be a partnership there and a navigation and communication of those roles.
And the last key is invite yourself. And so people who fared better through their illness journey were people who moved from the back seat of their illness to the front seat and spoke what was on their mind and asked the questions that were burning. People who were respectfully activated and felt invited and given permission to, inquire and be curious did better. People who were more quiet and just assuming that news will come to them when it's needed, and they took a back seat or passive role in their illness journey, didn't fare as well. So invite yourself is about being invited to speak what's on your mind, and acknowledge when you have questions. And so we're asking the healthcare system to share management of this illness with the people who are experiencing it. So the patients and the families need to be invited and need to be encouraged to ask questions. And we have to know how to walk alongside the care with the patients and families and not feel as the healthcare system that it's all on our shoulders. We need to work, as Hsien said, in partnership with the patients and the families.
Yeah.
So,
Invite yourself is really about trying to this power imbalance and bringing the voice of patients and families forward so that their needs and questions are answered. So these are the 7 keys for navigating a life-changing illness. I know if you look at them, we quickly went through them, but hopefully they're intuitive, but they can serve as a roadmap. And what's so, I would say, revolutionary about this, what's so interesting or special about this is, I think, from our perspective, we've taken what, the research has said and what clinicians do in a very technical way and tried to make it accessible, everyday, ready to wear, not couture, but ready to wear in language that's plain and accessible. So the simplicity of the language is so key. And actually that took us a long time because some of these phrases are things that patients, families, and providers have said, I can use this language. It can change what I say tomorrow right away. And so that's how we knew this was making a difference. The other piece is that it's actionable. These are very clear actions that enable patients and families to move from the back seat to the front seat, to bring their voice forward, and the power isn't in the system. The power isn't in your healthcare provider doing this. Patients and families can take the lead in doing these things and leach it out of an uncomfortable system and not wait for them to be ready. And last but not least, it can be done right away at any stage, tomorrow, next week, your next appointment. And we call that upstream, but we don't need to wait till some point in time. Sometimes people think that's at the end to get person-centered care, a palliative approach to care. No, we want people to get the best care experience, the best care possible at every stage right away. So these are the things that maybe took us a while to make it accessible, actionable, and upstream, but these 7 keys are really the heart of our revolution, to give it away.
I should also mention that the 7 keys are not stages. They're not steps. You don't have to do one before you do the other one. They're really just, again, the themes that we extracted from all those stories that we were collecting over the years of our work, that influenced a patient's journey to be either in the dark or in the know. And so what we're really saying is that all of these mindsets or keys or skills or ways of thinking are to be embodied by the patient and the family, so that by the next day, we have patients and families who have a new sense of empowerment or agency or control, are feeling more hopeful and feeling like they are less helpless, and that these are the things that can help them right from the get-go of the illness journey.
Yeah, I think what the piece that runs through is it helps you get information. And information, we believe, is the superpower. Information, you can choose what you do with that information. You can use it or not listen to it, but knowing that that information exists and having it can allow you to make decisions, and inform the things that you're going to do and your planning. So that's really the key of what we're hoping to do, and balance out this idea of not knowing. So how do you learn more about this social movement called the Revolution? Well, as I said, we have a website called the waitingroomrevolution.com. And on there, you can join our newsletter. I have a feeling that when you signed up for this webinar, we might have asked you if you wanted to join our newsletter. But the newsletter is the best way to keep in touch, or for us to communicate what's happening and all the different tools and projects we have to advance this. So one of the things you'll find on our website is our podcast. Now, that's on every podcast platform. We started this 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, actually, Sammy, in our closets during COVID. But it is, if I dare I say, grown and exponentially. We've over 100,000 downloads. We're in the top 1.5% of global podcasts listened to in 82 countries. Season 1 focuses on those 7 keys where we talk about them with the guest. But after that, we've invited many different people from all around the world to learn from them about this idea of how to improve the patient experience.
Yeah, and I think we share this with you not to be, patting ourselves on the back, but because just to demonstrate that there is a thirst for this information, that this was an easy way for people who told us that I like listening to the podcast season 1 because I could do it on my own, in my own time, in my own private, whatever, like they didn't feel rushed. So it was affirming for us because so many people listened to the season 1 of the podcast that we knew we were on to something, that these 7 keys were meaningful to people, and that we should keep going.
Yeah. And so that momentum led us to write a book. It just came out in September. I think it's on my shelf here. Anyway, it's a book. We're very proud of it. It took us quite a while to make this dream happen, but it is a how-to guide. We wrote it for patients and families anyone facing a life-changing diagnosis like yourselves of what to do. It's like an action plan, a what to do guide to have the best illness experience. So if this is, people like books as well, and it has been a bestseller in many different categories since it's come out. And yeah, we wanted to share that with you.
Again, and I think it's been well received even by the healthcare system, who we thought we're going to say, what are you guys doing? But actually, it's been very well received, which is another, I guess, signal that this was missing for people, that this kind of information of how to be a patient and how to be a caregiver and how to be a more human-centered care provider was an enigma in the busyness of the illness journey. It got lost. And so this is helping people to feel like a person again while having a serious illness.
Yeah, I think I would say the most consistent comment is patients and families who have read it said it helped them increase their hope.
Mm-hmm.
So hope evolves, hope changes, but that it can grow and expand and evolve was something that they weren't able to express or figure out how to do. So anyway, it's an ebook, it's an audiobook, it's a soft copy available everywhere you get books. But the other thing that I really wanted to share with you, and we have a couple minutes for this, and then we're going to open it up for questions, is we've partnered with Health Canada to create some tools. As you can see, our mission is to improve the patient and family experience. We know there's only 2 of us and millions of people with a life-changing diagnosis. So we wanted a social movement so patients and families can learn how to get information that's helpful to them, the kind of information they want, providers to offer that information. And so we're working with them we've created some tools, and I didn't put it on here. It's on our website, but there is a poster that they have collaborated with us on that's in doctors' offices all across Canada for the next few months, I think. It's called 3 Questions Every Patient and Family Should Ask. That's kind of based on our keys. But then they also wanted to create these tools for patients and families like roadmaps. And so we started with Alzheimer's Society, and our next on our list is the ALS Canada Society. So part of our hope to talk to you today is if what we're talking about is of interest, please join our newsletter, but you can also just send us a note, an email, or when you sign up, you can say, I'm interested in testing out these tools, because we are about to enter into a phase where we're going to test out some of these tools, and we would love to get feedback from real patients and families if it was meaningful and helpful. But I'm just going to very quickly show you these 4 tools. Obviously, I know it's very small and they're not available on our website yet, but this is the newsletter. The people who there will be the first to learn. But we created these 4 tools.
This audience is the first we've ever shown these, actually.
Yes, that's true. Yes, you are the first public audience to ever see these tools. The first, and they're sort of, like layers of an onion, is sort of the most broad and then the most specific. And again, it's for Alzheimer's, but you'll be able to see. This one is really generic for any disease. Help me ask the right questions, conversation starters. And we put 5 questions that we think patients might use or clinicians might offer to say, this is a good place to start, of where are we now in the big picture of this illness? What can we do now to be as well as possible? What are common signs of this illness worsening? What are important things to prepare for next? And what organizations and resources can support us? I know ALS Canada is a big supporter of this because they often say people find them too late, and the services and resources and support groups they have are all things that they hope people find early, but often too late. So this is one tool. So we're going to open it up. We're almost in the last, 100, I was gonna say 100 meters, but the last, few minutes. So we'd love to hear in the chat or, when we talk, if these are tools you would use or if you want to be a part of piloting these. But the next tool after that is one where we talk about, help me, can't see, prepare for what's next. Do you want to talk about this, Sammy?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so we put here just a generic sort of a menu of things that could come up for really any illness. But, do I have support for my daily routines? Caregiving, who and how, the housing situation is, what do I need to think about there? my personal wishes and family affairs, things to think about, and where can I get support? And this isn't meant to be a checklist where you do everything. This is meant to be a conversation guide for you and maybe a support group or a disease organization like ALS Canada, or your family doctor or your your specialist clinician to say, hey, what things haven't I thought about that you think are most applicable to me? So they can help you focus on the one thing that might be really important to think about, relevant to you, that you want to make sure you've thought about so that you can be prepared. So these are two tools that we created.
And these tools are not specific to any one illness. These are generic tools that cover issues that are the same across all illnesses, ways to extract information that is critical for people.
Yeah. And then, like I said, we have co-designed these with Alzheimer's patients, but our next phase will be to do this for ALS in the next year. And so you can imagine a version of this for ALS, but we are thinking of this sort of roadmap and understand where you are in the illness. And so just kind of putting some key signs at the beginning, middle, and late stages. And, really this is trying to help start a discussion, if this is a discussion that you want to have, of where is the stage you're at and what can be done to maximize quality of life at these different stages. So this is another possible tool about this big picture roadmap. Again, some people want this, some people don't, but it is, if they want it, this is a tool to support that. And then if you
We're just using Alzheimer's as an example.
Yeah, this is an example of Alzheimer's.
That's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And then I think there are people who really are, information seekers and really want more details of the different things. Not everything will apply, but some of the things that they can prepare for or ought to think about based on the thousands and millions of people who have had this illness before at the different stages that, that they wish they had known sooner. So some people want this much information, some people don't. But for those who do, this is another tool that can talk about some of the things that they might want to think about and prepare for at the different stages. Again, this is for Alzheimer's. So thinking about, well, there's a potential for cognitive decline. And so what are some of the things that I should think about then because of that might happen? And it's really trying to get at the so what. So if we notice these things, it's not about the tests and, the treatment options and the trials, but it's about, if this is happening, how is this going to affect my life? And what do I need to know about that? So anyway, these are just some of the tools that we're working on, again, as part of our mission to try to improve the patient and family experience, that whole umbrella of a revolution. We're trying to work with organizations, real patients, families, and providers to create things that will change the storyline. So I'm going to pass over to Sammy. I know she likes these slides.
I do like them. I like them because I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can take everything that we learned from so many patients and families who felt that they were in the dark throughout their illness journey and felt, overwhelmed and frustrated and out of control. And we feel we've been successful at harnessing, figuring out what it was about the in the know group that made them in the know and feeling so much more confident and in control and feeling like they recognize themselves, even though the illness is changing, that I'm still me. And we think that it's these 7 keys, these 7 mindsets, the ones that we went over, that if patients and families and healthcare providers can embody this kind of way of remaining a human through the illness and a unique individual and family, that they will fare better no matter the twists and turns of the actual illness. And so this was extremely exciting to Hsien and I, who felt that we were just Lucy and Ethel, with patients flying all over the place, that this would instill in patients and families and healthcare providers a more calm and person-centered way of approaching an illness journey.
Yeah. So I'm really glad we have some time for questions. I wanted to please just implore us all to just take a 1-minute survey. So part of, like I said, we're working with Health Canada to create those tools, and part of that is to do talks like this. And so they need data to demonstrate that people actually came, but also that hopefully the information we gave was valuable. So this is a QR code. If what we hope that you do is you take your cell phone and you just take a picture of this, or about to take a picture, and it will pop up into a survey. The survey is like 5 very simple questions. And if you're not able to do that, Kayla has very kindly put the link in the chat. Again, it's the same survey. It will take, I think, a minute. So I'm gonna work really hard and allow us to have a moment of quiet. It is hard for me to do. If you could please just give us some feedback.
Did you say to hover your phone over it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
take your
would take your phone would be the picture, like you're taking a picture of this, and then it will go to the survey monkey at the bottom.
hover the camera over.
Yeah. And there's a link in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm seeing people do that. Okay. So I'll come back to this, but in the meantime, I'll just put our information on. This QR code takes you to our website, social media, that Health Canada poster that I talked about, that's in doctor's offices. But if you go to your doctor's office and you don't see this poster, you can print it out, or you could just ask the questions. It's 3 questions every patient and family should ask. Our podcast, our book, all the things that we have, everything, we try to make it accessible in different formats.
If anyone has Instagram, they might choose to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, TikTok. Sammy makes videos on TikTok, so that's been fun. So anyway, I'm going to take this down. Everything, you can also find everything just on our website, Waiting Room Revolution. I'm going to take this down and put some questions up. I know we have a varied audience, and just put this is our evaluation code again in case you didn't get a chance. And then I'll stop sharing and we can look at some of the chat questions. I see Emily coming off camera too. Okay. I get to see your faces. Yay.
I actually did have a question come through via email from a client of mine. And I know you shared a lot of information, which was extremely helpful today. But do you guys have any other tips for clients and their families who may be having difficulty being heard by their care team?
Oh, yeah, we do. Yes, we do. And actually, we didn't mention this, but we are creating a workbook, a supplement to the book, because we've been asked by so many people, do you have a workbook? We would want one so much. And so we're going to have some tips in there, because this is the number one question we get actually is, what happens if I'm trying to get the information that I want, but I'm not getting anywhere with the healthcare team? And I would say that the more people in droves ask, the more we're going to change the healthcare system. And they're going to have to realize, why are all these people asking me to zoom out? Why are all these people asking me to walk 2 roads? And we're hoping that will be the catalyst of a new type of education that's needed on the healthcare provider side. So that's one thing, if we all do this like a revolution. But the other thing is I believe that if you speak to the heart of why you're looking for information, that you will get a different response from the healthcare provider, the meaning behind the question. So, doctor, I really would like to know what this next chapter looks like, and you're not getting anywhere, let's say. Then you might say, doctor, I'm picking on doctors because I'm a doctor. Doctor, it is really important for me and my partner that we have information. That's how we feel more in control. This illness has been really difficult for us. And the more information we have, the better. You might feel worried that you're going to upset us, but we will adjust and deal with it. I really would like you to speak openly and honestly with us, or else we feel like we can't trust people. So, what I'm saying is, instead of just asking the questions and getting nowhere, do some meaning making around and speak to the heart of why you're asking or trying to get what you're trying to get.
What you're really doing is you're giving permission to your healthcare provider to speak openly. You're almost coaching them or training them to role model the way that you want information. And like I said, our book is a how-to book, and we literally have conversation starters, scripts for you to use. Sammy just used some of them. I want you to know it's okay for us to talk openly. It's okay to talk about the hard stuff. For me, that means speaking openly about my illness, for better or for worse, so that I can remain hopeful and prepared at every juncture of my illness. I mean, that's just an example. There's several, choose one that works for you, but that's what this book is: exercises, tips, scripts, because this isn't about our story. This is about practical information for how to overcome the most common roadblocks. And our workbook is born out of, going deeper into that, but that was Walk Two Roads. Yeah, Walk Two Roads is not just a philosophy, it's an action. And what you're really asking your clinician to do is, I know you're here to give me the best care and hope for the best, but that also means helping us plan for the rest. Not plan for death, plan for the rest. What does the next month look like? The next 3 months look like? What can I expect? What do I need to prepare for? These are important things for me and my family to live the best life that we have. So if you have information or if it's not you, who can give us information? ALS Canada and your support groups and your community. That's what we want to know. That's what you would say. So it comes from both sides. Patients who don't want to know, families who don't want to know, providers who don't want to give it. It's the same kind of attitude that you've got to come and really keep at it. If it's not the doctor, the nurse. There are other people in the community, people on this, other support groups.
Let people ask their questions.
Thank you. I get excited. You can tell Steve has his hand up. We're very passionate about this. That's how we have a podcast. We're 8 seasons in. Steve, is there a question in the chat? Let me check.
I could unmute myself. Thanks for the presentation. I'm actually in hospice care, volunteer, been doing it for 11 years. Primarily, it's cancer patients that we deal with. And of late, the trend has been that they're mostly the stage 4 that we're dealing with. And one of the things that I have heard is, we didn't know that this kind of care was out there in the community. So a lot of organizations providing community care help. The message isn't getting out all that well. That's life. But I did perk up on the slide where it said, invite yourself. And I think Dr. Hsien said that people who do that do better. Can you define better? Because we often say, or I have said in the past others, that those that reach out for hospice care that tend to be better supported, but I have nothing to rationalize that or to compare it to. So could you give an example of the difference between someone with this disease who is supported versus someone who hasn't been supported, rather than use the word better? Please, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Steve. So I think it does go back to this idea of we see 2 fundamentally different illness journeys, one where people seem to be in the dark and those that are in the know. And so people who have, for example, ALS and feel in the dark are struggling with understanding the various changes that they're seeing. They don't understand the meaning of their struggles. They're lacking an invitation to understand the big picture of ALS, what the different stages look like. How are they going to know when they're transitioning from one stage to the next stage? And even though they don't want to transition to the different stages, there is a sense that people feel more grounded when they have that kind of information. And so those people who feel in the dark feel like they're just jumping from one crisis to the next and always chasing their tail, like from one crisis to the next crisis, and never, like they feel always on like a hamster wheel. And so people who get more information for better or worse feel like they can be more proactive, they can plan ahead, they can remain more calm, they know what's expected and what's not expected, then they can spend their time, instead of worrying about what's the meaning of all of this, the way that they want to spend their time, they can focus on other things. They're less likely to wind up in a crisis because they work proactively. And so information allows people to land and adjust and adapt. Without information, it's like you are floating in an ocean without an anchor. And that is a horrible way to feel, especially as the underlying illness changes. So these things that we talked about today are skills or mindsets to help people feel basically more in control, that their illness journey will be representative of who they are as a person, and that there is no two people with ALS that are going to have the exact same journey, because they are different people.
Yeah.
And we want them to feel like a person, not a diagnosis of ALS. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, Steve, I tried to put that slide up. It's really that what we call in the dark versus in the know, and all those characters. I mean, that's just sort of a, you know, a simplistic way to describe the feeling of what is better, but it is about feeling more in the know and in control and more hopeful and prepared. Yeah.
And
It's a great answer. And I think the one thing I see is that there's a transition between the individual who has the disease versus their main caregiver. That way of understanding switches, and the end stage for someone who has a disease, there's nothing good or better about this. It really does. Do we support the caregivers so that we don't see people burning out like we do?
Yeah. And again, I think I just want to emphasize, this isn't just about the end. This is about feeling that way at every step. I think there's two questions in here. It says Elizabeth has a question, but she is unmuted. Okay, so maybe we'll go to Elizabeth's question, and then there's one in the that got sent into the chat box. So maybe we have time for those questions. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. Thank you for providing this presentation today. I'm interested in the ALS aspect. I sure wish you'd been around in 1988 for my mom when she had ALS, and now it's my sister, my younger sister, dealing with it. Anyway, I was reading just this morning on a patient and caregiver Facebook site about when an ALS patient goes to the hospital for any medical problem, that it's really helpful for them to take a piece of paper with them that outlines maybe best practices with them, the good and the not so good. For example, like don't give me oxygen when I can't breathe, kind of things. And also a little summary of, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And I'm going to start working on that with my sister, but I don't know where to start. And I don't want to insult the hardworking people who work in the emergency department and in the rest of the hospital. In addition to that, I will say that in giving the home care PSWs an overview of my sister before they go in, because she can't really speak to them, it's really helped in them understanding that she can't even pick up a glass, or it seems menial for them to wash her dishes, but she can't put things into the water. You know, she can sometimes put bread in the toaster if it's light enough. But I just want to comment that educating the home care staff has just really brought a tight circle of care and compassion around her.
Yeah, you know, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your personal story. I think that you are so important in this illness journey that your sister's experiencing, because you are making sure that she remains your sister, that she's not just a cog in a wheel, You are putting the essence of your sister at the forefront when you are teaching the PSWs about your sister and what she can do and what she can't do. You're individualizing her situation to who she is. It's no different than people bringing in pictures of their loved ones when they're in the ICU. They can't speak and they're lying there, and families bring these amazing drawings and pictures and messages and cards, because what they're trying to do is say, this is not just an illness, a body with an illness. This is a person with unique needs. And I would say to you, Elizabeth, do not worry about insulting healthcare providers in the emergency room. You do not have to worry about that. What you are planning on doing or had learned about in what you were reading is a fantastic idea. One that Hsien and I have been thinking about is this idea of having almost like not a resume, not a passport. We don't know what to call it, but a one-pager that summarizes something unique about the person or things you really want the healthcare providers to know when you are seen by a healthcare provider. I think it's fantastic. And again, we don't want people to worry about insulting. Most of us are not insulting. We are mostly respectful. And I think you should feel permission and invited to be that activated person in your sister's illness journey.
Yeah, you're essentially inviting yourself and connecting the dots. That's what you're doing, and it's critical for a better
Thank you.
experience. Yeah.
I also
there is
wanted
one.
to publicly, sorry, I just wanted to publicly thank the ALS Society for their support of us as care providers. I've found support from them in the most, in the strangest ways I ever would have thought, such as art therapy. It's just, I cannot say enough about them, the journaling workshops, and just being there. They're community supports that you can contact at any time. I'm just so grateful, and I wanted to publicly acknowledge that there's ripples and sometimes just nice big warm waves.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. I saw one come in, but we had this question in the beginning, and we might just have time for this one question, and I'm sorry to the person who did. It was when a person with ALS might not be as proactive in their planning and safety, how do the ones around them, their inner crew, help them move to a place of acknowledgement and better planning for the future and present? I would just say that this book, it was written for patients and families, and many of the tips can easily be adapted. In fact, we have family shout outs, but they absolutely apply to families as well, of how to hope and plan with the patient on board, sometimes without. But there are different variations, and we talk, and it's critically important that as many people do so. Sammy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that everyone counts. So, and everyone in the illness story might be at a different stage of readiness, and we have to respect that. Not everyone is going to need and want the same information at the same time, but everyone counts. And so I think the ripple effect idea is that we say right from the get-go, we're in this together. So if I have ALS or my husband has ALS, we say like, this is an illness we're doing together. And so we might be, have different needs because I'm the caregiver and you have the illness and we might be so it's about exploiting these knowns right from the beginning so that we aren't in situations more downstream and having to get ourselves out of a pickle. It's usually when there's been this conspiracy of not talking really openly with each other that we end up with this huge vortex between people and a charade going on when, the stakes are higher. So this is all about upstream and throughout the illness journey, keeping the channels of communication open.
Yeah. I know we're at time. If you have more questions, I think Emily from ALS Canada put her email there. You can also reach out to us and we will try to answer them. And but I think yeah, we really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you, ALS, for hosting us. Like I said, we are going to be working on tools and are looking for real patients and families, and we'll work with ALS Canada to identify them. But if you're on our listserv, you'll be the first to know and, you know, give us insights and really help us. Welcome to the revolution. You know, this is about information that helps you and your journey. You know, we're a loud voice, but we need your voices too. So thank you.
Mhm. And you can contact us if you have other questions as well, at the Waiting Room Revolution.
Yeah.
There's lots of questions I'm dying to answer here, but anyway.
I just want to quickly thank you guys for hosting this webinar. It's been very impactful. There's so much information. It's really great to kind of see all these questions come up. And again, as we talked about, if more questions are coming up, which they always do, please don't hesitate to reach out to your community lead at ALS Canada, or you can also reach out to our community services email if you're not sure who your community lead is, or if you have just general questions. We can definitely have that communication and work with Sammy and Hsien for future questions and if anything comes up. But no, again, thank you guys so much for being a part of this and for joining us today. As we noticed, it has been recorded, so that recording will be posted for everyone to access. And for those that maybe weren't able to stay for the entire event or not able to make it today, so that will be posted for everybody as well.
And all our information, our podcast, one pager of the keys, on our website. So probably more than you might want, but it's all there. So thank you all, and yeah, and appreciate your time and hope this was helpful.
And be curious and ask questions, and the more information, the better. And when I mean better, I mean you will feel more in control.
Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah.
We need one big time. Yeah.